Imagine, for just a second, that you are a butterfly. You're just fluttering around, drinking nectar.
Living your absolute best life in mid-July.
Right. Exactly. You are completely, blissfully oblivious to the concept of winter, the very idea of snow or freezing temperatures or leafless trees. It just doesn't exist in your reality.
Because your lifespan just doesn't intersect with it.
Yeah, exactly. And today we're taking a deep dive into an alternative philosophical framework that suggests, well, that we humans are doing the exact same thing when it comes to our own mortality.
We are definitely the butterfly in this scenario.
Oh, 100%. We are unpacking two highly detailed translated excerpts by an author named Feng. One is a text from 2011 on the life and death of life, and the other is a 2006 text specifically on the soul.
And we should probably state our mission up front here. The goal of this deep dive isn't to ask you to adopt a brand new cosmology. We're not endorsing this as absolute scientific truth.
Right, it's just an exercise in stretching our minds, looking at reality through a completely different lens. So, okay, let's unpack this.
That butterfly metaphor you started with from the text is just, it's such a brilliant way to immediately disorient our default human perspective.
It really is.
Because if you ask that butterfly about the nature of the world, it will tell you the world is always warm and full of flowers. It is entirely wrong, but it lacks the capacity to know it's wrong.
Yeah, and the author argues that our human concept of a lifespan is just as limited. We conflate our physical existence with the ultimate reality of life, like capital L, capital I, capital F, capital E.
Right, we just assume that when the physical body stops functioning, the entity stops. But the text makes this massive distinction.
It does. It argues that what we conventionally call death is really just the disappearance of the carrier of life.
Right, not the end of life itself.
Exactly. It calls it a false appearance.
And the text uses some beautifully poetic comparisons to drive that home. Along with the butterfly, it brings up morning bacteria.
Oh, right, the morning bacteria.
Yeah, these are organisms that merge at dawn and literally die at dusk. They have absolutely no concept of what a full day is, let alone a month or a year.
Which makes sense. Or think about cicadas born in the spring and dead by the fall. They just cannot comprehend the passage of 4 distinct seasons.
And then the author just holds up a mirror to us. It essentially says, humans are no different from those morning bacteria. We measure the entire depth and length of life against our transient physical existence.
Because we can't see the deep past or the distant future. We just assume our brief flash of physical consciousness is all there is. It actually reminds me of a technology.
Oh.
How so?
Well, it's like judging the entire internet by the lifespan of a single smartphone.
Yeah.
Just because your phone falls in a puddle and breaks doesn't mean the internet died.
That's a great way to put it.
The phone was just the carrier. The network is still there, completely unaffected by the loss of that one specific piece of hardware. All right, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy captures the core argument perfectly. What this perspective does is completely decouple our identity from our biology.
Which is huge.
It is. It forces you to look at your fear of mortality from a totally different angle. If you are not the smartphone, but rather, a fragment of the data flowing through the network.
Then the breaking of the phone is just an inconvenience.
Exactly. It is a transition.
Yeah.
But it is certainly not an ending. You aren't losing yourself. You are just losing your current vessel.
Okay, so if human existence is just a temporary vessel and physical death isn't the end of life, I'm trying to visualize what actually happens when that smartphone breaks. Like, where does the data go?
Well, that's where the text gets really interesting, because the author doesn't just offer a vague, you go on to a better place kind of idea.
Right, it provides a highly specific directional map of conversion.
Yes, it shifts from the abstract concept of existence
Yeah.
right into the literal directional mechanics of transmigration. The text categorizes the next step into 3 distinct directional movements.
Downward conversion, horizontal transmigration, and upward conversion.
Spot on. Let's start with the downward movement, which the text explicitly labels as death. But again, not death as in ceasing to exist.
Right, it's a downward conversion to lower spaces. The author lists these out. He says the plant world, the animal world, hell, the frozen layer, and the inflamed layer.
Those last 2 are fascinating.
I want to pause on those, actually. The frozen layer and the inflamed layer, that implies something much more structured than just a generic underworld, right?
Absolutely. It points to a cosmology that is incredibly partitioned. These aren't just spaces of punishment in a traditional sense. They're categorized environments that suit different states of being.
So what does a frozen layer actually imply?
Well, a frozen layer implies a state of stagnation, a place where consciousness is locked, cold, unable to move or grow.
Wow. And the inflamed layer.
Conversely, an inflamed layer suggests volatility, chaos, a state of constant painful burning or agitation.
Ugh.
The downward conversion means your consciousness has taken on properties that require these dense, restrictive environments.
Man, that is a heavy thought. So that is downward conversion. Then there's upward conversion, which the text calls life.
Right.
This is advancing to higher spaces, specifically listing 3 levels of heaven: the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or the celestial islands continent of the Elysium world.
You have to notice the progression of time in those titles.
Yeah.
1,000-year, 10,000-year, and then celestial islands.
Which sort of implies stepping outside of time altogether.
Exactly. It represents an increasing expansion of existence, moving further and further away from the brief, cyclical nature of human time. It is an upward trajectory toward pure longevity and ultimate freedom.
Okay, so we have death, which is a downward trajectory to places like the frozen layer. We have life, which is an upward trajectory toward the 10,000-year world. And then we have the middle ground.
The horizontal transmigration.
Right. Which is defined as returning right back here to the human world. Wait, so according to this framework, being reborn as a human isn't considered living. It's just being half dead.
I know, right? That is one of the most profound psychological reframings in the entire text. Horizontal transmigration back to the human world is explicitly defined as being half dead and half alive.
Half dead. Wow.
It frames everyday human existence not as the pinnacle of reality, but merely as a crossroads. It is a waiting room.
We're just in a transitional state.
Exactly. Based on our choices, we are either marching downward to death, getting lost on the road, or proceeding upward to a more wonderful rebirth, which is true life.
So waking up, going to work, paying taxes, doing the human thing, you are literally just treading water in the half-dead zone. You're at the cosmic terminal waiting for your flight, but you haven't actually gone anywhere yet.
Yeah, and that framing forces us to question the nature of the traveler. If the physical body is just a chair in the cosmic waiting room, what is the actual entity that gets up and moves to the next destination?
What is making the journey to the inflamed layer or the celestial islands?
Exactly. What is the ghost in the machine?
Well, to explain this, the text points us to that second document from 2006. It's a reply to a consultation on the soul written to someone named Dr. Wang Rungquan.
Which has a really interesting bit of backstory to it.
It does. The text actually includes this fascinating detail about him. Dr. Wang is described as a miracle-working doctor operating out of a clinic in Jiuquan City, Gansu Province.
Right, and the author praises his noble medical ethics, his quick treatments.
And notes specifically that his prices were fair and reasonable. I just love that. It's a strangely grounded human detail to include right before a massive dive into cosmic philosophy.
It really serves a purpose, though. It grounds the esoteric in the everyday. It shows that these vast philosophical concepts aren't just for monks meditating on a mountain.
Right. They're meant to be understood by practical working people.
Like a rural doctor trying to understand the fundamental nature of his patients. So, in answering Dr. Wayne's questions, the author uses a series of vehicle analogies that actually parallel your smartphone analogy from earlier.
Okay, yeah. The text says, imagine you are at a dock and someone yells, "Look, the ship is coming." Or you're at a station and someone says, "The train is coming."
Or at an airport, the plane is taking off.
Right. And the question posed is, what do ships, trains, and planes actually have in common? Can they move by themselves? No. The only reason they move is because they have drivers.
They have people operating them.
Exactly. Without the driver, a train is just a dead aggregate of materials formed by energy. It's literally just metal sitting on a track.
And then the author takes that mechanical logic and applies it to biology.
Yeah.
He says, a daughter sees her dad coming home, someone runs from a vicious wild dog, a girl cries because her runaway rabbit is moving too fast to catch.
So what trait do the dad, the dog, and the rabbit share?
Why can they move? But when they die, they suddenly cannot, even though all their legs and organs are still physically present.
Right.
The text argues it's because souls inhabited their bodies. Once the soul leaves, the physical structure is identical to that empty train. It is just a vessel. The soul is the driver.
And the text tries to back this up. It points to Western near-death research, instances of reincarnation, and phenomena like soul infusion.
Where a normal person's voice, pronunciation, and intonation suddenly change to channel someone else.
Right. It references channeled books, too, like Jane Roberts' entity Seth and the author Neil, who wrote Conversations with God.
It uses these as proof that souls can leave one carrier and borrow another.
But I have to stop here and push back on something, because here's where it gets really interesting. The text pushes this driver analogy very far.
It does.
It claims that souls can inhabit animate and inanimate objects. It explicitly lists houses, vehicles, computers, trees, or stones as potential carriers. Wait, hold on. A computer. A stone.
I know, it sounds like quite a leap.
I'm tracking with the idea of a life force in a rabbit. But how does the text logically justify a soul driving a laptop? What is it driving if the object doesn't have legs or an engine?
Okay, so it requires us to understand a vital distinction the author makes between psychic energy and the soul.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Psychic energy is described as the overarching source of life. It is an ambient energy found everywhere in the universe. Souls, on the other hand, are defined as small psychic energy regiments.
Regiments, like individualized packets.
Exactly. They're individualized, localized packets of consciousness that contain this energy. So when the text says a soul can use a stone or a computer as a carrier, it doesn't mean the soul is going to make the stone get up and walk around.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, no walking stones. It means that a specific individualized regiment of consciousness has anchored itself to that physical structure.
Okay, let me make sure I'm getting this. The soul isn't operating the laptop's keyboard. It's just using the laptop's physical matter as its current anchoring point in the material world. Like someone sitting in a parked car with the engine off.
That is a great way to put it. The parked car analogy works perfectly. The physical object is merely the container holding the localized consciousness at that particular moment in its transmigration.
Okay, but if we have all these individualized packets of consciousness, these soul regiments, anchoring themselves in human bodies, rabbits, stones, and parked cars, and they are constantly moving up, down, and horizontally between the frozen layer and the 10,000-year world, how is this all managed? There has to be a system.
It sounds chaotic, right?
Yeah. How does the universe manage the traffic of 1 trillion different drivers?
Well, to explain the traffic management, the text outlines 8 fundamental characteristics of the soul. These aren't just random trivia facts. They are the physical laws that dictate how this massive system operates.
Okay, lay 'em on me.
First, souls have a spiritual nature and are alive. Second, they are non-material, invisible, inaudible, untouchable, and immeasurable in our material world.
Which explains why we can't just weigh a body before and after death to find the soul. The text specifically makes that its third point, right? Souls are completely weightless.
Exactly. Fourth, souls are consciousnesses. Fifth, they only function in the material world when they're attached to specific carriers.
Right. We covered that with the parked car analogy.
But the sixth rule is where it gets complex. They have memory. This means the consciousness regiment retains the imprint of its experiences.
Okay, so they carry their baggage with them.
Precisely. And the seventh rule says they have regional properties.
What does that mean? Do souls have a hometown?
Sort of. It means a soul naturally belongs to a specific region or layer of the universe based on its frequency. A soul with the properties of the animal world cannot comfortably exist in the celestial islands, just as a saltwater fish cannot survive in a freshwater lake.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. It has a regional affinity based on its nature.
Right. And the eighth rule states they can penetrate and enter any substances from their gaps, like beams or waves. So they aren't blocked by physical barriers.
A wall doesn't stop a consciousness regiment.
Exactly. Now, with those physical laws in place, we look at the cosmic mechanics. The text states that the reincarnation of all these souls is strictly managed by Tao.
Ow.
Yes, and in this specific framework, Tao isn't just a vague philosophical concept. It is described as the underlying automated operating system of the universe.
So it's the objective law that governs everything from the orbit of planets to the transmigration of souls.
You got it.
So Tao is the software running the whole simulation. And the ultimate gateway for all this soul movement is the place the text calls the continent for 3 realms lives to pass through. That is a wild name. What is it?
It acts as a cosmic filter. When a soul, or as the author prefers to call it in his broader Lifechanyuan framework, a consciousness passes through this continent, it encounters different layers of density. The soul passes through and enters corresponding spaces based entirely on its own contents.
So the continent for 3 realms is essentially a cosmic centrifuge. It spins you around, and wherever your specific density naturally settles, whether that's as a stone, a rabbit, or a resident of the 10,000-year world, is where you end up.
That's exactly it.
But what makes a consciousness dense or light? How does that spiritual physics actually work?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it comes back to that rule about memory and the contents of consciousness. Every action, thought, and intention you have, while in your human carrier, adds to or subtracts from the weight of your consciousness regiment.
Okay, so greed, malice, or ignorance might make your consciousness thick and heavy.
Exactly. So when you hit the cosmic centrifuge, that heavy density naturally pulls you down through the filter into the frozen layer or the animal world.
And conversely, compassion, self-awareness, and spiritual refinement act as purifying forces.
Right. They make your consciousness lighter, finer, and more subtle.
A finer frequency, so a highly refined consciousness would just slip right through the coarse filters and naturally float up into the 10,000-year world.
That is the elegance of this system. It is a physics-based metaphor for spiritual morality.
Mm.
There is no judge sitting on the throne. There is no jury weighing your sins.
There's no arbitrary punishment.
Exactly. It is an automated system of cause and effect managed by Tao, based purely on the specific gravity of your own mind. You end up exactly in the environment that matches your internal density.
Wow, which brings this massive, sprawling, deep dive right back down to earth, right back into the room with you, the listener.
It really does.
So what does this all mean for you? Even if you don't adopt this specific cosmology, even if you don't believe in an inflamed layer or the celestial islands, the text acts as an incredibly powerful thought experiment.
A huge one.
It challenges you to look at your current carrier, your body, your life, and your daily actions. Are you operating like that morning bacterium, completely unaware of the bigger picture?
Are you just treading water in the half-dead waiting room of the human world?
Exactly. Or are you actively working toward an upward conversion, refining the density of your consciousness so that it might pass through a finer filter?
It forces a profound reevaluation of how we interact with the world around us. And I want to leave you with one final lingering question derived from these specific rules.
Lay it on us.
We discussed how these packets of consciousness, which retain memory and frequency, can attach to inanimate objects. They can use houses, vehicles, or computers as their carriers.
Right, the parked car idea.
So if that aspect of this framework were true, what does that imply about the spaces and objects we interact with every day? Could the deep sense of nostalgia and weight in your childhood home, or even the bizarre, seemingly stubborn personality of a glitchy laptop, actually be harboring a driver that just passed through the cosmic filter?
Oh, wow.
Could you be interacting with a carrier that isn't biologically alive but is nevertheless inhabited?
It makes you look at the physical world in a whole new way, doesn't it? Maybe that stubborn stone in your garden isn't just a stone. Well, thank you for exploring this fascinating conceptual map with us today. Keep questioning the default settings, keep stretching your mind, and most importantly, keep diving deep into your curiosity. We'll catch you on the next one.